and we have with us on the last Sunday men with large coffee cups. The They are here to show us your cup, David. Yeah. Okay, now size matters. The
Cup of coffee, it does.
Okay, so just having a moment. The
You were in the Navy, Bob. You know exactly how big a coffee cup, size of your coffee cup does matter. That's right. Bigger
uh,
the cup,
it
more
does.
rank. That's right.
Well, yeah, I know. I was the guy that got sent to fill the coffee cup more often than not. Um, the the beautiful thing today is we are watching the world wind towards the future, uh, inexorably, and we're hoping to do a show today that, toot, toot, while is
Well,
not.
let me kick something off for you. I said recently that most of what people talk about things as if there's a still frame in a movie, and it's not. The movie is a whole reel, and that's essentially everything. There is no single frame of reality. We are all part of a continuing process. Everything changes, everything evolves. The status quo is the enemy. There is no stasis, there is only process. And so that's what I'm interested in, is the process we are now in. Where is it going to lead, or what are the possibilities it could lead to? So, but that's because I think like a science fiction writer.
Okay,
Weird,
well, the one
weird
I
how that
like
works, huh?
to think of is, yeah. Well, okay, so there's our premise. And we're off on this is the B Cube Sunday morning, and you guys know that we've got a new book coming out soon. As soon as I get a couple of writers I know to send me their work. Um, the Hey, I know you haven't hit the
Who could he be
deadline
talking
yet.
about? Who could he be talking about?
American Storm.
Right?
I
Okay.
have a new book out too called Shadows and Reflections, and I had a couple copies of it. I think I left them in Malcolm's car or something.
Oh no.
Otherwise, I would hold one up. But Shadows and Reflections just got a great review from the Toronto Star. So, and
Awesome.
of course, everybody has a book to plug except Jim. Jim, that's your fault.
It is. It
I
is.
hear
This has
I
been a
hear he
hell of a
sent
month.
you a draft book that was spectacular. He just needs to finish it.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of stuff I just need to finish. If you guys could find a way to get life to stop bothering me for a month so I could finish some of this stuff, that would be great.
Oh, please. If I could find a way to get life to be on hold for a month, you think I'd send it to you?
Right, right, right. Ah, yeah, it's
Okay.
a rough month, and I'm coming up on it too because I'll be on the road here in 18 days. I'll be on the road for our usual summer photography expedition, and in MizCon, I'll be at MizCon again this year. So I'm a panelist and a speaker there, and I'm still trying to put together stuff. I guess we're going to do every year at MizCon. I do a big photography talk, and so every year it seems to get bigger. Last year we needed a bigger tent. I was actually shocked. I don't know people that come to the
Yeah, they
science
haven't
fiction convention.
invited me. I must have offended them or something, because I would go to MISCON anytime they invite me.
I'll make sure I mention it to them. I think they changed. They're out at the fairgrounds now because they outgrew the hotel and they had some kind of conflict. The guy that owned the hotel thought that he's
Well, who
like
wants
some
a
kind
bunch
of
of science fiction fans in costume running around their
well,
hotel?
this guy, yeah, well, yeah, who wants to make millions of dollars? That's crazy. But
No, well,
yeah,
the thing about science fiction fans is the bars do not make enough money when the science fiction
right,
fans
yeah,
arrive. You
yeah.
know, ever since Paul Anderson and Gordy Dixon died, the bars have been hurting.
right, right. Well, that's the problem, though. And I don't know. It's Jeff Sturgeon and Todd Lockwood are regulars there, so they're pretty. I don't know
Well,
if
that
they're
would
keep the
help.
bar
Yeah, yeah.
operation, but I don't know. They had some kind of conflict with the guy that owned the hotel who thought we were all a bunch of weirdos, and so he didn't.
Well, but we
He
are.
really. he really had he really started to freak out, and so they've moved to the state fairgrounds, which is much larger venue. It's really cool. Get a
Well, we
hotel's kind
are
of a weird.
weirdos. It's
Well, yeah, but
Ray Bradbury said it best. We're the nuts who hold the bolts of the universe together.
exactly it. That's our job is to predict the future, which is what I think Bob was talking about for this show.
And the thing is it's if you do it right, it's profitable. It's like, and there are hotels that bid on science fiction conventions because we are profitable. We fill the rooms, and we're not to the bar, but everybody that one of the conventions, the St. Louis WorldCon, they promised to keep the hotel restaurant open till midnight, and they didn't. And that created a rebellion among the fans because it had been promised. So, but the hotels keep a book of various conventions, and at the top are the science fiction conventions. At the very bottom are the state police, who are just too rowdy and just
right.
They don't want to have them.
Well, that's what the last one there was the world. That time we were all three of us were at WorldCon in Chicago down on the Loop. I mean, that was a great venue. The hotel was a perfect layout for WorldCon,
Good
and then
restaurants close by.
Yeah, and I mean, walking distance from everything downtown Chicago is awesome, man. And the fact that all the people that don't like us won't go to Chicago is just a plus, man. That was great. I had a great time. That was probably one of the best WorldCons I've been to. I really love that one.
It was.
So I have a question for those of you who are familiar with Texas and on this show. James Tallarico, Charlie Kirk's body double.
Oh, he is Tallarico is he's wonderful, and of course he's running against what's his name, Paxton, whose rap sheet is just, oh my God, couldn't you find anybody worse?
But come on, man. I will tell you. I mean, literally the worst thing that Republicans have come up with is he's accusing him of being a vegan, right? He's not a vegan, but they're accusing him of being a vegan in Texas, right? I mean, that's like the worst thing that they can think of in Texas. Oh my God, a vegan in Texas.
He says he's been eating barbecue since before Paxton's first indictment.
The worst thing they can think. To me, that's just the most hilarious thing, And I just, Jesus Christ, that's.
Yeah, if that's the worst you can say about him, it's like,
wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't want a plant eater in charge of Texas, would you? Christ. God, it's so bad. I mean, you couldn't write comedy like this. Your editor would have been thrown out of the fucking office.
It comes back to the Republicans have no plan for the future. They really don't. Right. They never talk about what they're going to build, what they're going to solve, how they're going to do it. They only talk about attacks on the other guy, on the other side. And I think any really good candidate, all he has to do is say, I want to talk about how we can lower the price of groceries, how we can build a nest egg for your retirement, how we can do that. And he wants to talk about what I had for dinner last night.
Right. Well, that's the thing, though. But I mean, you put your finger right on it, David, as you usually do. I mean, you look at the White House. Look at the pictures of the White House. Just half it's bulldozed. They dug up the fountain in the front yard. Every part of that is dug up, bombed out. Right now, they're building a a UFC fighting cage match, and you look at this thing from the air, and it's like you said.
It's white trash. It's white trash.
Yeah,
and
again, it's not,
all of the artists have pulled out. So Trump is left. He's going to make a
Trump's going to perform now. I got to tell you, I am looking forward to his rendition of YMCA. I can't wait to see that. That'll be great. But again,
it's the leather jock strap that bothers me. I don't want. No.
But the thing is, though, it's continuous destruction. It's not It's not building. They
They're
never.
not
They
building
tell you.
anything.
They tell you who they hate. Again though. I see this. Their relationships. These are. There's a macro function here that is a reflection of American society on a larger scale. And again, I live in the. For those tuning in that don't know, I live in the deep South, the deepest of the deep South. And every church that I drive past got a sign out in front telling you horror and all the things that God hates and all the horrible, shitty things that their God's going to do to you. It never tells you hope and inspiration
Well, the
and
whole
do
point
unto
of
others. And that's
is
literally
supposed to be a way. Religion's
right.
supposed to be a way to cope with life. It's supposed to give you strength, internal strength.
Right.
Not
But again, that mindset is now the majority mindset of America of destruction and rage and victimhood and all the people that we hate instead of they keep talking about make
well.
America
Let me
great.
let me give you let
Oh,
me
go
let
ahead.
me interrupt you. There is a thing. It is not who they hate. It is the illusion of who they hate. They have made
Right.
up a straw man of the liberals are this and the liberals are that. The liberals want to eat babies and the liberals
He's a
want to
vegan.
fuck your dog and he's a vegan and it is not. They're not even attacking liberals or Democrats or whatever for who we are or what they are. They are attacking their illusion of what they're afraid of and blaming
Right.
the other side. So it
Right.
is not they make up the enemy and project it onto whoever they want to defeat. And as that's so they're living in an alternate reality. And
Right.
Philip K. Dick could probably write a hell of a book about living in that particular reality. He did. It's called Eye in the Sky, where
Right.
these people get propelled into everybody else's alternate reality, and it's all horrible.
Right. But again, this is religion in America now, where 90% of it is the message from the pulpit is all the people that they think they hate. Again, you've heard me tell this story 100 times, man. The guy down the road here in this town, and you've been to my town, the guy that's
Oh
got the
yeah,
giant sign about trans people. I'm like, dude, how many trans people have you ever met in your entire life? And
I know a
um,
lot of trans people. I don't ask what they got behind
right,
their pants or in their skirt or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
irrelevant.
But it's very important to these people. And again, they're not getting that from life. They're not getting that from their own personal experience. No trans person ever did this guy wrong ever. It never didn't happen. But when he sits in those pews on Sunday, there's a preacher man up there telling him all about it. And when he turns on Fox News or Newsmax every night, there's a guy in a pair of skinny suit pants who is posting memes of Donald Trump as this ripped hunk of beef beating the shit out of people, talking about, gay people. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but you
Well,
know,
I will tell you, I have found more comfort and more understanding and more reality and more kindness among gay people and trans people than I've ever found among my fraternity
right,
brothers at USC or
right,
some of the people in some of the
exactly,
big industries who like Gene Roddenberry was the classic limousine liberal. You know, saying, yeah, I'll write a
right,
check for so and so. He never did, but he
right,
was, he's talked the talk, but walking the walk was a whole other.
right,
He never managed it, but he was really good at projecting and saying all the right things that liberals should say.
right. Well, you got it
So,
this morning. In fact, I was just having this argument right before we went live with somebody online. I had this shit suddenly is crossing my timeline here about, hey, at least John McCain was the last real good Republican. He pushed back when, that old woman said something about Barry. I'm like, just stop with that horse shit, okay? McCain pushed back one time, and he was booed so badly by the crowd that he never did it again. And then, no matter what crazy shit Sarah Palin said, no matter how far out there, McCain never said a word. Don't give me this horseshit about McCain was the last good Republican, the last guy with honor. He was a fucking coward. He might have been an honorable man in uniform, and I would never speak ill of his military service. as a Vietnam veteran, his later military service, I might have something to say about. But McCain, the politician, that guy was as big a piece of shit as any of the rest of them. He was a fucking coward. He was part of the Keating Five, for Christ's sake. All right, and we're busy talking about John McCain being the last honorable Republican. Give me a fucking break.
The last honorable Republican was Dwight D. Eisenhower. And I do want to say, last night, Malcolm and I went to see Pressure, which is an extraordinary movie about the decision when to do D-Day with the weather coming in. And there's this one weatherman, a guy named Stagg, who said, you cannot go on the 5th. There's going to be an incredible storm. You're going to kill thousands of men. You'll never get to the beaches at Normandy. And finally, he found a gap in the weather. So on June 6th, they landed, as you may have heard. And but you know, and it was just a gap in the weather. And I think the line that convinced Ike, who was brilliantly portrayed by Brendan Fraser, but the line that convinced Ike is when Stagg says they'll never see you coming, because they wouldn't expect the gap in the weather. And so the weather was a key part of the D-Day victory. And but the thing is I love these historical movies that actually make an attempt to illuminate the facts of the matter. And that it is a good movie. It's the great performances by Brendan Fraser and Andrew Scott. And you'll recognize Andrew Scott because he previously played Moriarty on the Sherlock series. And he's great. He is absolutely great because he plays a guy that nobody likes, and you don't have to like him.
Right. Well, Fraser. I always loved that guy when he was young. He played every goofy role, and now that he's older, he's playing these, much more distinguished roles. And now he's going to go back and do The Mummy again. But he's amazing. I love Brendan Fraser. He's one of the.
He went through a rough period, and he came back stronger than ever. And his portrayal of Eisenhower, you do not see any of the goofiness of the past. He is totally. I mean, by the end of the picture, you think he's more Eisenhower than Ike was.
Right.
So he is. It's an incredible portrayal.
Right. And, well, it was crazy that Pressure's got Damon Lewis in it, who was Captain Winters in Band of Brothers, and now he's playing Monty in Pressure.
Oh, and he does a great job as Monty. You end up hating Monty.
What's doing with the British accent?
Yeah, and Monty is an idiot and Churchill finally said to Monty, Monty was complaining that Patton moved in where Monty was supposed to have a victory, and Patton was 2 days ahead of him, and Churchill says, "This is the Americans' war. We are the Allied force, but the Americans are leading him." And Churchill had to explain to Monty, "You are no longer the star." So, Montgomery was still trying to fight World War I. And Patton was ready for World War III.
What's amazing, what's interesting to me is that you mentioned. Hang on a second, Bob. Is that you mentioned the weather, and weather is what my background is, and so weather has always been weather is an incredibly important part of war and mission planning and those sorts of things. It's when we were. I was one of the war planners that wrote. One of the op plan for the operation in Iraq, the initial operation invasion, and weather is an enormous part of that. I mean, you literally have meteorologists with security clearances that are part of the mission planning process specifically for that. And while that's interesting, or maybe not to you,
where were the weather planners? Where were the weather planners when Jimmy Carter's attempt to rescue the hostages?
Yeah, the hostages. And that was a problem.
Yeah,
right. But one of the things that's interesting to me is that weather is it has enormous impact on a lot of things. And here in the Gulf Coast, weather is something you keep an eyeball out on. My son, who makes professional YouTube fishing videos, worries about the weather every day because he's 4 miles offshore in a kayak fishing. And so weather becomes very important, but it's also a critical piece of things like farming and agriculture and ranching and transportation and all that kind of stuff. And yet one of the things that Trump and Elon Musk and his band of doji shitheads gutted was the U.S. Weather Service. And nowadays, you get my wife and I were just talking, and I just was talking about this online here the other day. This was a huge topic of conversation on my feeds here the other day. Was that one of the things that I miss pre-Trump is I miss accurate weather reporting because it's obvious that weather prediction, at least in the civilian world, has declined significantly and measurably since Trump took office and since Doge gutted our government, critical functions of our government, because now you cannot predict with any accuracy more than maybe 12, 15 hours in advance. And as a matter of fact, last night I was looking because I've got some things going on today. I was looking at the weather for today, which showed there would be no rain and it would be clear most of the day. And then I got this morning to thunderstorms, and my weather prediction now is showing that I'm going to have severe thunderstorms all afternoon. 2 years ago,
Yeah, so you're not
weather
going to invade Normandy
prediction.
today. Is that what you're telling us?
Well, now I've got actually relatives coming over that I got to cook for, but um, and I've got the Mustang convertible pulled out of the garage and parked out here on the grass, and the top on that needs to be fixed, so I've got it covered up at the moment. So anyway, the thing is that a year ago, 2 years ago, you could predict the weather with here at 4 or 5 in advance, and now you're lucky if the 12-hour prediction is accurate. And while this is an irritation to someone like me, it can be deadly to the fishing industry. It can be absolutely economically devastating to the agricultural sector, which is already suffering under this asshole's tariffs and his trade wars and the lack of fertilizer, which is tied up by his very real war, which currently shows no sign of ending. Last week we had a peace deal and it was all over and everything was going to be great. And that
Well, you know, he's giving the
asshole.
Democrats a
Now,
wonderful
yeah,
issue. Is like because in the future the Democrats can say, "Do you want an idiot in the White House?" Last time we had an idiot in the White House, we lost this, and this. The farmers suffered, the fishing industry suffered, and then and you can talk economy by saying, "Do you really want to vote for an idiot?" I mean, if I were running for office, and believe me, I do not want to. The reason people have said, "Why don't you run?" It says, "Well, first of all, I'm too old, and second, I might win."
God help us all. It's
Yeah.
the same thing. Like I said, my background. Yeah, I mean, you know my background. I cannot suffer fools gladly. I'm not the kind of guy that you would want to be a politician. I'm not a bridge builder. Yeah, and I'm
If
not the
I
kind.
needed to blow up a bridge, I'd call you first.
Right. I'm not the kind of guy. Now, I would make an excellent chief of staff. Don't get me wrong, but I know where my limitations are. I'm not a politician, and I'm not. We already have enough people that don't know what the hell they're doing that are unsuited for office. In office, why the name of God would you want me? You know,
Well,
I would make an excellent advisor. I'd make an excellent chief of staff, but I'm not the guy that you want in office. And that's
yeah.
the problem. We
The
keep
thing is,
electing people that we don't want in office that aren't
we have
suited for it.
too many people who are like the guy sitting at the end of the bar telling how to solve the world's problems. It's like, or the guy at the end of the counter in the diner who can tell you how to solve the world's problems. It's like, yeah, you can't even get enough to buy yourself the blue plate special. You're nursing that cup of coffee for the extra half hours. Give me a break.
Right, exactly. And so again, these are things that you would hope that Americans would finally wise up to, but I'm not sure if they would. I mean, we want to talk about the future and where we're going to go here and what will happen following the next election, however that goes. And the problem with that is that the great strength of a democratic republic are the people. That's also the worst weakness. That's the Achilles heel because what was that Tommy Lee Jones line from Men in Black? A person is rational, but people are dumb, stupid, panicky. I don't remember exactly how the
Because
quote goes.
it's mob rule. It's like
Right.
you can stampede a herd very easily. All you have to do is panic one or two, and once they start running, the rest of the herd starts running as well. It's like, and
Right.
I
Well,
love watching the natural world videos of the herds in Africa or wherever, and get a lion attack one critter at the edges of the herd, and the whole herd takes off. And that's really what the Republican politicians have been doing. They preach hatred of, oh my God, look at this, what happened in West Pigfuck in Alabama. And
he's a vegan.
Yeah, and he's a vegan, and the rest of the herd takes off panic stricken. Oh my God. And it's like, because it is easier to inspire hatred than it is to inspire enthusiasm for building a better future. It's like,
Right.
And it is very hard. John F. Kennedy said we could do better, and even Eisenhower said we can do better. And Truman, who ended as one of the most unpopular presidents ever, and said, but 8 years later, you're looking back, Truman was right on all of the things he did. It is very hard to be right when you have people arguing, oh no, you can't do that. And they did that in the movie Pressure, where Monty is arguing, but against the weather. Monty is arguing, I will land my troops no matter what the weather is. Yeah, right. Monty was an idiot. And we have people who simply are so invested in not dealing with reality that they end up killing thousands and thousands of people because they would want to be right about the way things are. And they aren't.
Right.
But let me ask you guys both a question. You're really smart folks.
I fooled you too, huh?
No, I've read your work.
Okay, Bob, let's go with that. Now, I'm not saying that I've passed any kind of cognitive test lately, but okay.
I can identify a horse. You show me a plane, a train, and an automobile, and I can tell you which one is the horse.
Which one?
And I can tell you where the rear part of it is right now. So the basic question is this. Before the show, I asked you if you guys knew who Sherry Redstone was.
Yeah, and I don't. I did. You said she was
and that's okay. I wasn't. The fact of the matter is, she runs Paramount. Go look her up. She's an interesting character. One of her quotes, when I went and looked up Sherry Redstone quotes, was, "She is hoping Trump will do what she was never able to do."
Which is?
Which
is what? Paramount?
Fundamentally, I'm not sure what her function is other than evil. She's an 82-year-old or a 72-year-old heiress. She's just a rich old white woman that's bitter as hell and has got power and is using
let
it.
me tell you something about running a movie studio. Nobody knows how to run a movie studio, not since the days of Sam Goldwyn and Louis G. Mayer and Jack Warner and Harry Cohen, and nobody. You have to love movies to run a movie studio. Now, in the 60s or 70s, when Jaws and Close Encounters and Star Wars made billions of dollars, Wall Street noticed that movie studios could make a lot of money. And so the movie studios ended up with Wall Street brokers in charge, and movies got greenlit because of their potential to make money, not because they were good movies, not because Jack Warner wanted to see the movie, not because Harry Cohen thought the movie would be a good movie, not because they loved movie making, not because Louis G. Mayer or what's his name thought Gone with the Wind would, really. They made movies because they loved them. But when the movie studios became seen as profit centers, you lost the people who loved making movies. Now, the history of Paramount ever since, the history of Paramount and all the other studios as well, particularly Warner's and even Disney, has been a history of replacing people who don't make money. And Sherry Goldstone is not going to last. If she thinks movies is about this or that or the other thing, instead of making money, she's not going to last. What's his name over at Warner's, who thought, oh, we're going to shelve Coyote versus Acme because we'd rather take the financial loss and write it off and take the tax benefit for writing it off than actually put it in the theaters and having a chance at, well, it's going to be a very big hit because of the buzz around it has been as extraordinary, and everybody's going to want to go see it now. Well, I certainly want to see Coyote versus Acme. Coyote is one of the greatest characters that that Chuck Jones ever created. But if you don't love movies, you have no business making. if all you think is the next Superman or the next Batman or the next Marvel hero or the next Star Wars, then you shouldn't be in charge of them. Yes, you can make those movies, but you should also take chances on other movies. Like Pressure is not a franchise, and we also saw Backrooms, which is not a franchise, and such a terrifying movie that by the time you walk out of the theater, you're not sure where you are. Movies should be a chance to experience something that is out of the ordinary. And by the time you get to the third picture in the franchise, you're not going for the movie, you're not going for the experience, you're going for the familiarity. It's like, oh yeah, there's a new Alien movie, let's go see that. It's like, yeah, and you get to see people running around while being chased by the special effects. Like, the only franchise I have really liked is when they reinvented Godzilla for Godzilla Minus Zero and Godzilla Minus One, and the new one I'm looking forward to is because they've gotten back to the heart and soul of Godzilla being this giant thing that you run from. They've gotten back to Godzilla's a real monster, and so I'm interested in that. But if they turn it into an endless franchise, I will lose interest by the time they get to the fifth or sixth picture. It's like, I want to see something I haven't seen before. I don't want to read the seventh book in a series, but as much as I might like the writer, it's like, yes, I know the only exception to that would be George R.R. Martin, who always gave you something new in each subsequent book, and Terry Pratchett, who he would do 3 books about one character and then move on to a different character of the Discworld. And so he never let you get bored with the same old characters. So.
Well, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the sequel from somebody in this conversation right here. Okay.
Never heard of him. I don't know who you're talking about. But by the way, if you are talking about the War Against the Tor, books 5 and 6 take you into places that you cannot predict from the first 4 books.
Exactly. Every one of those books was a different aspect. There was something new or different, or a different way of looking.
Jim McCarthy was growing. In each book, you see a little bit more growth. So he starts out as this annoying little teenager like you would find in a Star Trek convention. Right. And by book 4, he knows what he's doing, but he's still a pain in the ass because he's still self-righteous. Right. And he never outgrows that. Self-righteousness is part of genius, I think.
Well, he's got to believe he's the hero, otherwise, But you're talking about exactly what you're talking about here. And again, you see this translate out into the real world again, exactly where Bob started with this. Right now, I'm looking at an NBC News story about 13 farmers across Iowa who 11 voted for Trump. They're all getting screwed. They're all losing their farms, but they still back him.
I feel very sorry for them, but
they still back him, and they say they're hoping to God, as one put it, that he follows through on his promises by the end of his term. And I'm like, well, what promises?
The man doesn't follow through on promises. To him, a promise is just something to manipulate someone.
But this is the point, though. The point of this is, what promises? Now, the assumption, see, NBC never asks them what promises they're talking about. And they never say. The assumption, of course, is those economic promises. He'll open up markets, and these are corn and soybean farmers, the same people that I grew up with. I grew up in corn and soybean country in Western Michigan, and it's the same mindset. And the thing is that the assumption is that that's what they're talking about, but in reality, that's not what they're talking about.
Well,
he keeps talking about his promises. What promises was it? What specifically was Trump appealing to with these people?
Trump legitimizes their fear. He legitimizes their fear and their hatred.
Right. That's exactly right. The promises that they have in the back of their head, even if they haven't articulated it, is racism, homophobia, get rid of the Muslims, goddamn put women where they belong in their place. These are the promises. This is the Make America Great Again part that makes Trump appeal to these people. Because if it wasn't that, then they wouldn't back him any longer. Because his economic policies, as far as the agriculture section go, are a goddamn disaster. These people are willing to hang on, though, and hope he makes good on his promises, because hating people is more important to them than not losing their goddamn farm.
Yeah, and
And this is the part. This is the part that pisses me off about modern journalism, is that the reporter on that story never pulls that thread. They let you think that what these people are actually talking about is the Chinese soybean market or Argentinian beef farmers. But if that was actually the case with these people, they'd have dumped Trump a long time ago. What they're hoping for is that he makes good on those promises of kicking all the people that they don't like the hell out of this country, or grinding them into the ground as fertilizer. That's that they. And again, when you start talking about movies and the kind of shit that's popular nowadays, it's this again. Studios won't take a risk on anything new, just like voters don't want to take a risk on anything new. They want to go to you and I, David and I, you and I go to a movie once to see something new. I want to. And the funny thing is that when there is something new, something like Hail Mary, for example, it's the biggest goddamn thing of the year, right? It's an amazing movie. Not part of a franchise. There isn't anything else there. They're not going to make another one to follow up. That's the movie. Or when you see, but studios look at that and they think, that's amazing. You know what we need to do? We need to reboot Spider-Man again. That's what we need to do. And people go see that damn movie because they know all the answers. They know the story. Wait a minute. Are you telling me in this one, Batman's parents die? It's the same. They know the story.
You go back to the comic books and they killed Robin. Batman survived. They killed Robin. And then they killed then he had Nightwings or whatever. And they killed him too, because they discovered killing Robin's assistant shows we're being realistic. Excuse me. You got a guy in a bat costume fighting the Joker and whatever, and swinging through the Gotham. Right. He's got and he's a billionaire. It's like, why doesn't he spend some of his billions on actually solving some of the problems of Gotham City? It's like the only reason the Joker and the Penguin and all these other guys get away with that shit is because he hasn't solved the real. If you get people real jobs, they don't turn to crime, because generally people would rather have real jobs where they feel they're contributing to themselves and their family. The problem is you run into, and they had this where they were trying to teach some of the kids in the ghetto that they could make more, it was more responsible to get a real job. He says, hey, I'm making like $500 a day running dope for the, why should I, make $50 a week working in the corner drugstore? It's like, yeah, that's a very compelling argument too.
Right, it is. But again, all these things are reflections of society itself at large. You have farmers that, in the Midwest are literally voting for things that are detrimental to their very existence. Because the world that they want is not, it's not the world that exists. It's not going to exist. It never did exist, but they have this fantasy that it did. And that hatred, that homophobia, that xenophobia, that Islamophobia, those things are all comforting to them, because they don't even know any of those people. You remember, I grew up in that kind of place. Everybody's the same. They're all the same color. They all go to the same church, and they all do the same job every day. And so let
me share something. Back in the 60s, before Stonewall, I was hanging out at a gay club that was for people under the age of 21. You had to be 18, and but there were a few older guys who would come in. There was a guy who was like 35, maybe pushing 40, with the gold chains around his neck. Very handsome guy. So he was picking up young guys. He was what we call a chicken queen, and and I was saying, I got this notice from the draft board. He says, oh, no, do not tell them you're gay, because it'll follow you the rest of your life, and blah, blah, blah. And right, and this is the guy with the gold chains around his neck and the shirt open here. Whatever. But he's explaining to me the cowardice of the 40s and the 50s. But my generation and the generation that came, the boomers who came after me, it's like, no, I'm tired of pretending I'm something I'm not. And people came out, and that was the Stonewall Rebellion, and the 70s were full of people coming out and having the pride parades. It's like, yeah, I'm gay, so fucking what? And the result was we changed the conversation about being gay. If you hide out, you don't change the conversation. If you come out publicly, and that was what Harvey Milk used to say. And I went to a number of rallies where Harvey Milk was the primary speaker. And Harvey used to say, come out. When you come out to your family, and you come out to your friends, and you come out to your employer, yeah, some of you are going to get hurt. But when you come out, they can't hate us when they know who we are. You know, if they have an investment in loving us for who we are, they're going to have to learn to understand. And he was right. And yeah, there were a lot of people who got hurt, but the great majority changed the conversation. And that's really what we have to do to make any difference in America, is change the conversation from one of cowardice to a conversation of courage.
Right. And I think that's very profound, David. And I think that's a hell of a model for everything else. Again, you know, I sit and I look at this stuff, and again, you see the conversations that I wind up in online all the time. I see people, in fact, this week, you know, I had people shouting at me, this is a Christian nation. Really? Because your Christ, I'm not a religious person, but your Christ, as far as I can tell, said, feed the hungry, clothe the poor, heal the sick, do unto others, you know, easier for
do unto others before they do it to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I said, so if you tell me this is a Christian nation, why do I never see you Christians quoting your Christ? Why do I never see you demanding that our government feed people, clothe people, house the homeless, do unto others as we would have them do unto us? Again, the voice of, and again, I'm not a religious person. I'm a guy on the outside looking in, and what I see are the people that are loudest in your religion, that speak for your religion, are the ones that are preaching hate and exclusion and violence. And
well, let me share this story with you. There was a young preacher who was going to take over the church in the South, the way I heard it. And the old preacher who was retiring said, I want you to preach kindness and hope and goodness this week. And then look at what you made in the collection plate. And next week, or the following, he says, now I want you to preach hate and anger and fear, and notice what's in the collection plate. And he noticed that the more he preached hate and anger and fear and revenge, the collection plate was a lot bigger. And so it is, how much money can you bring in by appealing to people's darker impulses? Because what happens is you get their adrenaline flowing. It's harder to get people's adrenaline flowing when you're preaching goodness. But when you are preaching, yeah, let's go after those terrible vegans, they will fill up the collection plate, because it's like, you preach hatred. Let me say it this way. It takes two people to make love, but it only takes one to start an argument.
Right. Well, you know, and again, these things, and I think these are all excellent points for the larger argument, which is, as you said, if you want to change the conversation, then you have to speak up. If you want to change the narrative, then some of us are going to get hurt. And I do think that there are a number of folks speaking up. I mean, I look at the folks outside the Delaney Detention Center in Minnesota at the moment that are getting their heads busted in to change the narrative. And that is remarkable.
You have to be willing to be arrested. There was, we had this conversation about civil disobedience, and some of the people, well, why are they arresting me? I'm just being civilly disobedient. Well, no, the whole point of civil disobedience, you go back to Martin Luther King, who understood, yes, get arrested and sit there in their jail while people question, why is this person in jail for exercising his right to demonstrate, exercising a right to free speech? In other words, you must embarrass the system by going to jail. And if they, those 6 people who arrested the demonstration you just talked about, by going to jail, they embarrass the system. Yeah, they're going to have to deal with their own personal criminal records, but they are making a statement that the system is wrong. And this is where Gandhi understood this with civil disobedience. There's a wonderful movie about Gandhi where the Indians are lining up to be beaten by the British until they have broken the back of the British, because the British say, we are hurting innocent people. We can't do this anymore. And there's a scene in the movie where we're willing to do this and this and this. What is it you want? And Gandhi says, we want you to leave India. and there's no negotiations. We want to, and eventually Gandhi was right. The British had to leave India. This did not. It was not necessarily good for India. It sparked the civil war that broke off into Pakistan. But ultimately, it produced India for Indians and Pakistan for Pakistani, and that's really what the ultimate goal was.
Right. Well, one of the things I would say, I would caveat this, and I get feedback on this. And again, I'm two things here. I despise, after spending my entire life in the profession of violence, I despise violence for the sake of violence, and yet here I find myself agreeing with you that sometimes it takes violent protests and it takes people getting their heads busted, it takes getting thrown in jail. Now, that's what it takes now to change the system. And the problem, the part that chaps my ass, that makes me very angry, is that it didn't have to come to this. And I mentioned this.
We should have been activists when it counted.
Right. I mentioned this morning, that this country is flawed as the founders were. Okay, don't write me, goddammit. As flawed as they knew they were flawed, and they knew they hadn't created a perfect system, but they created a system that would allow us to change as society changed, and change our government without violent revolution, without bloodshed, without murder.
Winston Churchill said, "If democracy is the worst form of government ever, except for all the others."
Except for all the others, right? Exactly. And the thing is that now immediately when I say that, of course, I get 1,000 messages from people saying, "Now, hang on a minute. Every change in America has come with violence." Yeah, that's true. It has, but it didn't have to, and it didn't have to this time either. We had multiple opportunities, obvious opportunities, flux points in the flow of time where we could have altered our destiny, where we had gone in a different direction, and we wouldn't have to asshole and his asshole billionaire friends who are currently destroying our country. We wouldn't have had to be violent. We wouldn't have to have people having their heads smashed in outside the Delaney Detention Center at the moment to protest fucking fascism. But the easier path was too much for some folks. They always somehow managed to convince themselves that forcing humanity into having only the choice of violence is somehow better than nonviolent change. And we had multiple choices other than the situation that we find ourselves in now, where we could have changed rudder, we could have advanced our society as slowly and as painfully and as incrementally as that may have been, without finding ourselves in a position of having to go to jail to change things now. And again, the worst part about that is every time I mention that online, I get a bunch of little shitheads that show up and tell me, both sides are just the same, and it wouldn't make any difference. And I'm like, listen, man, let's try it. just this once. Instead of being a shithead, maybe act like an adult, show up, make the adult decision, and let's try that. Instead of burning the building,
there is an argument. The argument that both sides are the same serves the Republicans. And it used to be that the Democrats had an overwhelming majority. But the argument, both sides are the same, had a lot of people say, well, I'm now an independent. That way I don't have to be a Democrat. Right. Okay. So now you're an independent. And the independent vote goes back and forth. You win the independent vote, you got to win the independents to vote Democratic. And the thing is the problem is that the independents vote are targeted by the Republicans. They run the Green Party candidate because the independent, I can't vote for a Democrat, I'll vote for the Green Party. Well, that's a vote for the Republicans because it isn't a vote for the Democrats. And the Libertarians, that's a vote for the Republicans because it isn't a vote for the Democrat. So the Republicans do all these false flag operations to pull people away from supporting the Democratic candidates. And they've been doing it since Nixon's era.
Right.
It has been a long term. The John Birch Society, and I was working as a busboy when I was 16, and we had one of the waitresses had been bombed in England in the Blitz. So she was now an American citizen, and she was anti everything. So it was a right-wing John Bircher. She was a member of the Birch. So she used to go into these right-wing rants in the
Right.
green room or the blue room, whatever it was called. And so I learned a lot about so I went out and I bought the John Birch Society Black Book and the Blue Book, and I read that it's like reading Mein Kampf translated into English. And because it was about democracy is mobocracy, and what we need, literally it said, what we need is a strong man in charge. And so it was all about how to undermine the schools and the school boards and the local elections and and it was all about the exact game plan that the right wing has followed since the early 50s, when Fred Koch, the father of the Koch brothers, funded the John Birch Society. And they have been at work for almost, 80 years now, 70 years now, democracy in the American government. And I tell people this and they go, oh, yeah. But they don't realize that this is an ongoing plot, and a lot of them are not children who, well, we failed in Germany, but our real target has to be the United States, because if we get the power of the United States, we can create the Fourth Reich. Okay, and that really, Donald Trump used to keep a copy of Mein Kampf next to his bed. God, I hope it was probably the English translation, because the man has a third grade
he's not
vocabulary.
reading it in German, I don't think.
Not reading, but the thing is, the whole idea of taking over America and turning it into a tyrannical government, they didn't study history, because every tyranny has ultimately failed when the tyrant dies.
Right.
It doesn't take long after the death of the tyrant for the tyranny to collapse. The Soviet Union is an exception only because they had built up a tyranny.
The party was was the tyrant. It wasn't built around a cult of personality. Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't until the failed Soviet coup of the early 90s that the tyranny collapsed. Right. And was replaced by another one, which we have in Putin, simply because the Russian people didn't know any better. They didn't know they had the right to overthrow their own government.
Right. Well, again, you're looking right at it here. So the problem is that society develops an inertia, and that you can see disaster coming, and it's like the Titanic. You can't, you can see the iceberg, and you get the little rudder, and you're steaming along with all the boilers lit, hell bent for metal, and you can't turn. And then there's also the argument at the conning station of whether they should turn or just plow right into it anyway. And, maybe hitting that iceberg's the best thing for us,
well, they didn't have binoculars, because the guy with the key to the binocular locker forgot to leave the binocular. Right. He got replaced by somebody else, and he forgot to leave the key behind. Well, they didn't have binoculars.
But again, you can see the same arguments occurring. And if you say to somebody, listen, there's an iceberg, we're in the ship, there's thousands of lives dependent on us. And the guy next to you says, well, I don't know, man, maybe we should just hit the iceberg, because maybe that would be better for everybody. That's literally the conversation that I have every day online with these people that say, the best.
Actually, if they'd have hit the iceberg head on, they would have damaged the valve, but they wouldn't have ripped open the side of the ship.
Well, and they might not have stunk, but they'd have killed a hell of a lot of people anyway. But my point is that both of those arguments are wrong. The correct answer was, we can't see well enough. We should slow down. We should ensure that we have a proper watch set for the conditions.
Well, why they didn't slow down.
And we should have enough lifeboats for everybody on board. And
they couldn't slow down. They only had enough coal to get. They had to plow through. They didn't have enough coal to keep the boilers burning all the way to New York, because there was a coal strike in Belfast.
You can see the analogy here.
And also, one of the coal bunkers was on
fire. Right. But again, you can see the analogy here. You see the analogy in American society now. Did you see that exact analogy in every Twitter or every Threads conversation online, where many times I say, listen, man, we can make changes, or we could have made changes to our society for the betterment of everyone without killing people, without bloodshed. And the answer inevitably is always that guy that shows up and says, "No, no, no, it's too late. We got to burn everything to the ground." I'm like, "Oh, an arsonist." You, sure, arson is a perfectly legitimate method of urban renewal. People die. It's a huge disaster.
Well, Nero
Yeah, I
burned
mean,
half
Nero's
of
a perfect
Rome so he
example.
could
Yeah,
build the Colosseum.
right.
Yeah.
Nero's a perfect example of urban renewal. He got rid of all the Roman tenements and built himself an enormous palace and a stadium as a result. It was a little hard on the Romans, though. And this is my point here, is that, again, you can see the iceberg and you can see all the terrible decisions that were made, to the point where you're 30 seconds from the collision, right? And you can see all the horrible decisions, all the wrong decisions that were
Well,
made to get you to that point. You can see disaster literally coming at you at 20 knots.
and you can't stop because the rudders on the Titanic were too small to turn that ship.
Right. Well,
If
again,
they had put
and
the
this
right
is
size rudders, they could have turned the ship in
right, and
time.
again, this
It
is,
was a disaster of multiple little missteps that all added up to a
and that's
big disaster.
of course, that's the analogy that I'm making here. Is that's the society that we're in now. The rudder's too small to turn us now. The iceberg is 30
There's
seconds
no
from impact.
binoculars. We're steaming full speed ahead.
Right,
There's
and
a
you
fire in the coal
literally
bunker.
have people standing, next to me shouting, "We should go faster," and and we should steer more directly at the disaster. And you have some folks that are looking at the iceberg and saying, "No, it's great, it's fine, man. The icebergs are normal. We're
It's
part of
just
the
ice.
ocean."
It's it's
They're the same folks that are telling us, "Listen, man, more CO2 in the atmosphere is good for the plants." Okay, and again, uh, the, you know, there's not enough lifeboats, and people are going to drown, and this is the situation that we find ourselves in, and not only that, but in that, I don't know what that noise is, but in the in that analogy, you had those folks that were so enormously wealthy, and then you had the people that were down with the rats below the waterline that had literally nothing.
third
Right, they
class.
had literally nothing,
Yeah.
and the wealthy people took the lifeboats and rowed the hell away and left everyone else to drown. And you literally had people like Peter Thiel, who this week announced that he was moving to Argentina because he sees disaster on the horizon of the United States. He's taking his money and moving to Argentina. Of course, the the traditional retreat of Nazis of fucking Argentina. I'm like, was Joseph Mengele's house available for rent? For Christ's sake, man. These are people that aren't.
Well, there is.
These are people that aren't even making.
There's more to it than that, and I forget the article I read, but there is he thinks that there's some kind of Argentine America.
Right.
It's like
Yep.
he's certainly trying to protect himself because if any Republican with any intelligence has to be looking at the poll numbers and the fact that
Yeah.
the fact that the Democrats have won almost every local election. Every time a Republican goes up against a Democrat in a state election or even some of the whatevers, gubernatorial elections, that's what I was saying. The Democrats have been winning consistently. And, if I were a Republican, I would not want to be going into the election season where, unless I knew that the elections were rigged somehow in my favor. And
if you were a Republican, David, I'd have you by the front of your shirt right now, shaking it.
I only voted for a Republican once in a local election because my sister asked me to. Fortunately, he lost anyway, but it was it was just a very local election, city council or something. And it was like, oh, all right, because she, my sister's not stupid, and she said he's a good man and he'll do a good job. So I trusted her, and he lost anyway.
I voted for Republicans in the past. I was a member of the Republican Party for a number of years until George Bush tried to get me killed, and that was probably too long. And nowadays, I don't belong to either party. That always makes me laugh when when I get these assholes online say, "You Democrat," I'm like, "Hang on, you're already off course here." And hey, it's 12 o'clock.
I was telling Malcolm last night. We're driving home from the movie, and I was talking about two men. I won't mention their names, but they ran a very effective personal effectiveness course that went on for decades. It was and did a lot of good for a lot of people. But I noticed two things. Both of them were diehard Republicans. It's like, how can you be talking about relating to people and leading these courses that are about people being at their best? And then I said, but the giveaway was those courses cost $300. You are not speaking to the working class. You're speaking to people who have $300 who think, oh, gee, I want to be more effective in my job as a corporate vice president. That's who they were. They were working at the top of the pyramid. They were not doing anything that helped anybody at the bottom of the pyramid. So of course it was easy to be a Republican then, but to really work, to talk to the people, the working class, who do I have enough money to pay the rent and feed the baby? That's a whole, those people don't have $300 to be in your personal effectiveness course. So thank you very much. And the thing is there's a whole class of people that the Republicans think, oh yes, they're the ones who, take out the garbage or serve they don't think they're entitled to a living wage. And the one that really pisses me off is when some Republican says, well, the minimum wage is really a starting wage for the kid working at McDonald's. Have you been to a McDonald's recently? Right. And there's the 55-year-old woman we're serving.
Right, I haven't seen a kid working behind the counter at McDonald's in years.
Yeah.
Or
the minimum wage was never.
But the question.
It was never a starter wage. It was always supposed to be a living wage. You go back to FDR, who signed the thing. The minimum wage is a living wage, what you can rent an apartment or buy a house, feed your kids, and even put something away for the future. The minimum wage has not been raised in 20 years now, more than 20 years. It's still like it's $7.75 when it needs to be really somewhere in the early 30s. You need to be in the $30 an hour is what you need to survive in today's economy. God forbid you should try to sell that minimum wage.
Right. Well, the question is first of all, is that mindset. It's even the logic behind it that this is a starter wage. What the hell does that mean? Why? The question asked is, and again, this is how we value labor in this country. When you say that's a starting wage, well, let me ask you something. That supposed 18-year-old that's working at McDonald's, is that person working any less hard than the guy that's screwing lug nuts on an assembly line in a Ford plant? Because the answer is it's the same amount of labor. You ever baled hay for crap? Just baling hay.
Do you know who the most important person in a restaurant is?
The dishwasher.
The dishwasher.
You don't got clean dishes.
Right.
You don't got dinner.
You will forgive.
Right.
You will forgive mediocre food. You will forgive bad service but if you get a dirty plate, you will never go back.
Right. And the other side of it too is, even if you don't see the dirty plates, the first time that your restaurant serves up botulism or foodborne illness will be the last goddamn time that you're open. See Lauren Boebert. She had to become a state representative because her goddamn restaurant went out of business. The point is that that's how we regard labor. In Europe, being a waiter in Europe in a restaurant, that's a profession, man. I sat in bistros that had 5 tables on a sidewalk in France, in southern France, where the guy waiting tables, he'd done that for 30 years. That's who he was.
I got a story to share.
He might even own the damn restaurant.
Same thing in England. Same thing in England. I was in. I had a habit. Every time I was in Europe, I'd spend the last night at Grosvenor Hotel because it's right over the train station, and you could take the train direct to the airport. Right. So I would have a breakfast at the Grosvenor Hotel, and I would go straight to the airport. So one day, I'm having breakfast, and I said to the waiter, this is great tea. We don't get tea this good in America. And he said, of course not. Last time we sent you our good tea, you threw it in the harbor. and I said, and this is a guy I knew. This is a guy who had spent his entire life serving people, and he had a relationship with everybody he served. He cared about the people.
Right.
And he cared about, and he had this wonderful sense of humor that you would not find anywhere else with the people who come in, they work for a while and they quit because the job is too hard and they're not making enough money. And that's here in America. It's like to find a restaurant where people really love their job. So I used to love going to a diner. There was the waitress and the cook were married and they took good care of their customers. And one time I had ordered liver and onions. I don't know why. And I literally found a cockroach under the liver. And I said, look what happened. And she said, oh my God. Oh, and they were so apologetic to me. It's like, I don't know what happened, but I never stopped going there because they were such good people. And most of the food was pretty damn good. So
I don't know.
but,
I don't know. I find that
any other restaurant, I would have never gone back to any other restaurant.
But the thing is,
see, I trusted them.
But the thing is,
I don't know how it happened.
You know, again, it's how we regard people in this country. We seem to have this idea that because you flip burgers, somehow your labor is worth less than the guy that screws lug nuts on a tire in a Ford plant somewhere. It's the same thing. You know, you look at how we talk about garbage men in this country. Now, we'll thank a veteran for their service, and I don't know how many times I got thanked on Memorial Day. I'm like, hey, I'm still alive, man. You got the wrong guy. But we'll thank a veteran for their service.
Good job. On Veterans Day, I'll say thank you.
Right. But we'll thank a veteran for their service, but we don't thank the garbage man. Well, I tell you, man, it's 101 degrees outside right now with about 100% humidity. And you tell me who's more valuable, because if your garbage man don't show up for a couple of days.
When they had the garbage strike in New York,
that's a guy
in Manhattan, and the piles of garbage piled up on the streets. And after a couple of days, you realize you had a problem.
Right, that's incredibly intensive labor, and somehow we don't value that as much as some guy in a $3,000 Armani suit sitting in an office 100 stories above the highway. And again, it's this mentality from the founding of this country where there were the people that owned everything, and then there was their property who worked in the cotton fields. And we still regard people in this country with that same mentality, except 95% of us are the people that are flipping burgers and loading garbage cans in the back of the goddamn truck. And I'm like,
if you don't think that burger flipper deserves a decent wage, why are you putting that burger in your mouth?
Exactly. And so we will pay the guy in the suit hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and regard the guy making our lunch with absolute contempt. And it's an astounding mindset in this country, and that sort of contempt for the value of other human beings is a big part of why we're where we're at. Hey, listen, we're at 10 minutes after 12, and I know we usually run long, but I've got about 30 family members inbound that I have to cook for. And so this is the point where I'm going to bid you all adieu and punch the hell out. I will be on the road for starting here in about 2 weeks. I'll be on the road for the rest of through the middle of July. If you're coming to MizCon, I'll see you there. And otherwise, I'll be doing this.
All right. You have a good week. Have a good month. Have a good dinner for your relatives or people you like.
Right.
All right. Whatever.
I just
and
go where
I'm going to beg off too because I got to.
I go where I'm told I flip the burgers. I'm told to flip. All right.
Hey,
all right.
Thank you guys for coming here. And I'm going to say goodbye here and take 2 minutes with my guest before I leave. And thank you.
Love the